Okay, Katie Couric, this was a long requested one. I find this to just be an absolutely explosive account from Katie Couric, who I know is only revealing this now because she wants to sell books.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important for us to cover, Krystal, because here's the thing. If she's willing to admit this, what are people sitting on that we do not know about?
So true.
For those who have not heard about this, and that's why this is a much bigger media story to me, in my opinion. Let's put this up there on the screen, which is that Katie Couric covered up RBG's, the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dislike for Colin Kaepernick and other NFL players taking the knee back in 2016. Katie Couric says that she edited a 2016 interview to, quote, protect the justice after she said people who kneel are showing, quote, contempt for a government that made life possible. Now, obviously, that was an inflammatory political statement at the time. But here's the important point. Katie Couric says that she did so specifically in order to protect Ginsburg's reputation, because she felt that Ginsburg had a, quote, blind spot whenever it came to the issue of racial justice. And here's the even more explosive part. Couric claims that Ginsburg, who was 83 at the time, was, quote, elderly and probably didn't fully understand the question. Now, here's the thing.
She's a sitting Supreme Court justice.
Right, so that was 2016. She died many years later, 2020. So that means there were a lot of very important cases, as I recall, Krystal, which were decided in that time. So Katie Couric, according to her, had information where she believed that the former Supreme Court justice was not all with it. And look, I don't know either way. I know some people who spoke to RBG. They claim she was with it. She also survived multiple bouts of cancer. I mean, listen, you know, she was a lion in that regard. But we have multiple things happening. Number one, Katie Couric was arguably one of the most famous journalists in America. I mean, she, you know, America's Sweetheart, Today Show, all this before my time, but I've read about it in terms of
I've met her. She's not very nice.
Okay. You can tell that story. But she was revered, I mean, across this country. She had the infamous Sarah Palin thing. I mean, everybody knew who she was. She is outwardly admitting that in this particular case, this 2016 period, she sat on and edited out a highly newsworthy clip. Look, a liberal Supreme Court justice poo-pooing the kneeling protests at the time, that's news. Well, and if that happened to me, I can tell you as a journalist, no matter whether I like them or not, that's the first thing I clip and I put out there.
Absolutely.
Because it's about contributing to the discourse. If RBG is too old to understand the question, that's on RBG.
Yeah, but we
that
also
ain't
know
on you.
that is a total, like, bullshit rationalization.
I agree with you.
She didn't want RBG to be canceled.
She just didn't want her to be canceled. Exactly.
She wanted to protect her.
Right.
And so she did include in the article, she was with Yahoo News at the time, Katie Couric, she included that RBG said that the protest was, quote, dumb and disrespectful. But I just want to read you the full quote because it's pretty inflammatory. You can see why she was like, oh, this is going to be a big problem for her if we put this out. She said that the protest showed contempt for a government that has made it possible for their parents and grandparents to live a decent life, which they probably could not have lived in the places they came from. As they become older, they realize that this was youthful folly. So very inflammatory and insensitive comments. No doubt this would have been a massive scandal. And so it matters not only because, you know, if she isn't able to understand the question, et cetera, obviously that is significant. But I think more to the point here, RBG has been held up as like the quintessential do not know wrong liberal icon.
Right.
And as we've talked about on this show before, when you create heroes out of these people where they're just unimpeded and they're an icon and they're more of a celebrity than they are in her case, unelected, extremely powerful official with the power to, you know, change law and interpret the Constitution, it's really important that we actually have a clear picture of who these people are. Supreme Court justices sit for interviews so incredibly rarely.
Yes. I mean, look at Stephen Breyer right now. Everybody watches what the guy says. He's like, is he going to retire or not? What's happening?
Well, and that's the same thing here. I mean, this is part of, if you are a liberal or progressive, there was a big conversation about RBG needs to retire so that her seat can be filled by Obama, so we can make sure that we maintain liberals on the Supreme Court. And, you know, comments like this, having a more full picture of what her actual views are and massive blind spots with regards to racial justice, that may have more successfully put pressure on her to retire at a time when she could have been replaced by someone who would still be there. So there's huge potential consequences to covering for a figure with this type of immense power. And it's insane that she did this. The other side note here is when she was weighing, this was like a big conundrum. She's like, oh, geez, what do I do about this? Which, again, the fact that this is even a conundrum is crazy. Like you said,
shouldn't be a conundrum.
No matter who we interviewed, if you had this kind of bombshell, you would, that
Doesn't
would be
matter
the
if I
thing
like
that,
them or not.
Right, that would, you would know that would be the focus of the story. So this is a big conundrum. She's doing soul searching. There's an internal battle at Yahoo News and all of this. The person she turned to for advice, David Brooks.
From the New York Times. Who's also an opinion columnist. He's not a journalist.
And he was the one who was like, she probably didn't understand the question.
Yes.
So you should just take it out. And the last piece of context here is after the interview aired, I guess RBG's office either wrote or called Katie in Yahoo News and was like, she didn't mean that. Can you take that part out, et cetera, et cetera. That's not the way that this works. That is not the way that this works.
I cannot believe that, A, that she will admit it. B, that it just goes to show that she wasn't the only one who knew. Here's the thing, too, that people should understand. When you have these big network interviews type things, there's a lot of people in the room. We're talking about crews, we're talking about editors, we're talking about there's sign-off, there's executives. She also called a former head of ABC News, and he was like, you gotta keep this in there. And she didn't listen. If you're that guy, what are you doing? You're sitting on the head, a huge scoop. I mean, you should call ABC and be like, hey, you're not gonna believe what Katie Couric did over there. But when you go on, you work for everybody, there's a lot of business to protect, these types of secrets, they can stay there. It really makes me wonder, what are people sitting on? I have no idea. One of the best things that ever happened during the Trump years was, remember whenever he just released the full video of 60 Minutes interview? He was like, he's like, screw 60 Minutes, and he just released it. He ended up looking like a buffoon.
He looked worse.
But, I mean, I was like, hey, this is actually great. I would much rather see the full thing. This is the thing about these edited, cutting room floor. If they're willing to admit, several years later, now she's dead, now it doesn't matter anymore, what else are people sitting on? That's what I want to know. And I have seen many of these types of productions in the White House. You know, the ABC, Good Morning America, George Stephanopoulos shows up. They have 30 hours of footage. What are people sitting on with the Biden administration? Well, I mean, that's a real, Obama. I mean, what clips are there of Obama with people talking and more that were never released? We will never know.
Well, and you know 100% if this was a conservative Supreme Court justice.
Done. Yeah, it's out.
It'd be out immediately. There'd be no soul searching and call to David Brooks. What do I do? Did he really understand the question or whatever? No. It would be put out as well. It should.
News. Yes.
It says everything that the instinct of Katie Couric in that moment was to protect the powerful rather than to protect the people who might be impacted by the decisions of this woman. Right? That says everything about how our journalist class actually sees themselves. And again, Katie Couric is as big as they come. She is as influential. She's as much of an A-list journalist as you could possibly be, although at this point she was at Yahoo News. So that was a little bit of a come down for her. But that is the way that our journalist class sees themselves and their role. How do I protect the powerful and make sure that they're okay versus how do I make sure that the public has the information they need to be okay? I think that says it all.
Completely outrageous. Maybe they'll finally take these RBG flags down that are all around DC. I would fully support that, even if this is the reason for it.
They're not going to cover this story on CNN or MSNBC.
That's a good point. So actually, apparently, Brian Stelter talked about it.
Did he?
To his credit.
Okay.
So, I mean, he talked about it. He's like, this is terrible. You know, it's like a one-time thing.
Unfortunately, no one watches this show,
just
so we'll never know.
That's right. That's right.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.